Some of you have read the articles that I wrote called Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, where I've analyzed the work of the big giants of industry, starting with Ford, that invented the flow lines, and then going to the person that I consider the biggest genius in industry, in operations at least, which is Dr. Ohno. The one that have not just invented but implemented the Toyota production system, the one that all of Lean came out of it. And what I have tried to show in that article is that they followed rigorously the four elements, the four basic steps of flow. The first one is that improving flow is the main objective of production. Exactly like we said before. The second one is that in order to go about it, not just give it lip service, you have to establish a mechanism and to implement a mechanism that prevents overproduction. Yes, flow lines are so effective not because they are conveyor belts, but because there is limited space in front and after every work center in a line. And if this in a line, a work center filled up the space after it, and it continues to produce and spill it on the floor, nobody regards it as effective. In other words, the real thing there is don't produce when it's not needed. Same thing is definitely for the Kanban system. You don't have a Kanban card, you may be a very expensive worker working on a very expensive machine, but if you don't have a card, you are not allowed to produce. These are the mechanism to prevent overproduction. That's the first step, because otherwise the flow is populated with so many things that shouldn't be there. And then improving the flow does not help the company, it just improves and enable us to do faster the things that we shouldn't do in the first place. What we've done so far is we actually implemented the mechanism that prevents overproduction. Haven't you noticed? We've established what the levels that we need from finished goods, and we are making sure that only those levels will be maintained, no more. And in order to enable that, we have to condemn local efficiencies, because otherwise what will happen? Now that we have excess capacity, even if the inventories are appropriate, even if we have reached all the levels that we wanted to reach in finished goods, since we do have people which don't have what to do all the time, we will make sure that they are working. In other words, we will violate the basic rule of flow. But then comes the fourth element. And the fourth element is, now that you prevented the overproduction, you have to balance the flow. In other words, you have to concentrate to take all the disruptions that slow down the flow. Only then. You see, this is one of the problems of theory of constraints. Practical problems. When Ford have put his rules of preventing overproduction by limiting the space, or when Ohno have put his rules of preventing overproduction by limiting the amount of inventory per product that is allowed to accumulate between each two work centers through the Kanban system, the immediate result of these actions was that the total output of the company, the throughput, went down. And that's why there was no choice but to continue immediately to start to improve the flow by addressing the local processes. The problem of TOC is that the mechanisms that we are using to prevent overproduction, rather than reducing the throughput of the company, of increasing it dramatically while reducing the inventories. And because of it, there is a tendency to think that we're finished, that it's okay, that we've already got all the improvements. No way. We do have to continue, exactly like Ford and Ohno have done. We have to continue to deal now with the local disturbances in order to improve things by another order of magnitude. That's imperative. But this does not mean that we have to deal with every disruption, because there are so many disruptions, there are so many things that can be corrected. The question is to build the mechanism that prioritize which disruption should be dealt with. You know what will happen otherwise. What disruptions are we going to deal with? Not the ones that it's important to take out, but the ones that we know how. Grave mistake. In lines, it's so obvious what to deal with. Because if one work center in the line stops, very soon the whole line stops. In Kanban, in just-in-time or lean Toyota production system, Ohno had to establish a whole mechanism in order to guide where should the disruption be dealt with. The whole mechanism known as by reducing the number of Kanbans and then reducing the number of items per container, where he put the target to be one-piece flow. We have to establish now the mechanism that will tell us where to concentrate, on which disruptions we have to eliminate. That's what is standing now in front of our eyes.